Wait. Hey, it's birthday time. That means we gotta do something special. So I'm gonna read some old Yu-Gi-Oh stories that I was writing in 2015. I was going to make a return and continue my new era storyline, but then, I don't know, I kind of passed it up in favor of working on my own card game instead. That's where Dokailo comes into play, but I'm not ready to present anything from Dokailo currently, so we're just gonna bask in the nostalgia here, and then maybe some Yu-Gi-Oh people will enjoy it, I don't know. So here's Yu-Gi-Oh! Zero Sec. The backstory to this story, yay English, is that it takes place on the Resonant Continent, which is one continent away from where Destiny's Horizon takes place. Destiny's Horizon took place on Sunset. See, same time period where Blaine Phoenix is present, but of course being on a different continent, Blaine's not here. Instead we'll follow the story of someone else. I had only written 7 episodes before diverging into other projects, but I don't know, I just kind of decided to pick this one. Maybe we can read another one some other time. And then, of course, when Dokailo is ready, we'll start reading some Dokailo. But, yeah, so here we go. Yu-Gi-Oh! Zero Sec. Turn 1, Relentless Pursuer Foley. Alright, let's see. Machines clicked and clanged incessantly throughout a vast, nearly pitch-black room. Only several overhead torches lit the laboratory. 3 scientists fled between several containers filled with a turquoise liquid, marking things in their notebooks as the liquids oscillated. A circular piece of the ceiling opened, descending on 3 chains. The scientists were at their attention, even saluting the red-haired gentleman who was being lowered on a large silver throne. He wore a white jacket and dark pants like the workers, but his former was laced in metals and patches. I see this is still where I decided to overkill the description for characters. Whatever. His low tone echoed throughout the metal-walled chamber as he huffed, "Progress." The sniveling scientists continued to glare eagerly at one another until the middle finally stepped forward, reading off his notes in a sheepish tone. "Well, it still doesn't seem to be working. The liquids aren't moving." The leader's fist slamming against the chair shut up the scientist. "Just drop in the extra batch," he commanded, adjusting his tie. His fierce brown eyes shot death from behind his glasses. It's been clear to me from the beginning that this will solve the problem. Now just do it. All your meaningless experiments have done nothing but waste time and money. I know what the answer is already." "But, sir," another chimed in, bowing at the same time as the leader turned to him, "there's no telling what will happen if it goes wrong. Our calculations..." He received a disgusted frown from his cohorts. "They've been showing that this may not reveal the dimension you want." The leader now wore a horrific smirk. "I don't think you realize which ingredient I'm talking about." He spread his arms. "I know adding more liquid will lead to problems, you fools. Maybe you didn't check the last mission briefing well enough." The 3 scientists all screamed in terror as massive robotic hands wrapped around their waists and dragged them midair. Although they kicked and squirmed repeatedly, they found themselves dangling over the open containers. The hands let go and the 3 pawns disintegrated on contact with the turquoise essence. 2 electrodes emerged from the 3-story ceiling, drawing in power from a nearby free-flowing stream of electricity. The reaction zapped each of the containers, forming a bright and blue triangular portal in the middle of the room. Now off his throne and in awe of the development, the leader walked toward the light with his hands held out. Could it be? But as he approached, the blue turned to a deep gray and the electric currents ruptured. A strong current of wind slammed into the man, sending him back and into a table. After flipping over and regaining his composure, the man was able to glance up just in time to see a Duel Monsters card being spit out of the portal. What? He reached for it, a faint beat resonating from the gray ahead of him. Scene transition. Resonant, one of the 3 major floating continents of the new era. Named by the old capital for its endless forests, lakes, deserts, and mountains, this quaint land grants its content citizens a world of medicine, astronomy, and biology. Hollow Zone, the new major Duel Monsters company, has just taken off here, leading thousands of duelists to new heights never before imagined. But the revolution has only just begun for not only new cards being printed, and even created by those who wield them, but old treasures are being uncovered in the ruins of the old era. Glide Quinn placed his fierce red eyes on one such hidden ruin among the thick brush of Resonant's infamous forests. The young adult of 19 donned a sleeveless white vest with matching undershirt and long pants. His hair was also a similar tint, but it was currently drenched. Though the explorer would have wished it was damp from rain, it was instead from the unforgiving heat wave shooting through the region. He was exhausted, barely able to trudge along as the relentless sun pounded him with its rays. By now, the only thing that kept him moving was the sight of the ruin. It was an impressive temple, one of Aztec descent. Its stone walls were buried into a small hill, and moss had grown to blend it into its surroundings perfectly. He leaned against a tree and sank to his knees, the marvel not only a glorious sight, but one of mystery. How it had managed to stand after all this time was nothing less of a miracle. But he knew better than to slouch and spend too much time outside. He had to enter and collect his prize. Peering over his shoulder and adjusting his backpack, he ventured into the building. Of course, the chamber was unlit entirely. Glide retrieved a flashlight, shining it to reveal several torches strung along the walls. Humming under his breath, he quickened his pace at the feel of a relaxing breeze and found the source, a thin passageway. One short hike later, Glide stood in front of a gray, polished pedestal overlooking the daunting drop into a deep chasm. Waterfalls surrounded the area, dropping into the infinite abyss. The male slowly approached the pedestal, drawing 3 cards from his Duel Monsters deck, and giving off a light smile as he gazed upon the 3 slots on the stone slab. Within moments, 3 of his cards rested face down in the holders, and a sparkling light spread throughout the chamber. Alas, no trip had been perfect thus far. Oh, thank you. Oh, God, is that Sabada? I can't read it, actually. Yes, it is Sabada. Thank you very much, Sabada. Alas, no trip had been perfect thus far, and this one would resist to being the exception. Someone else was trailing Glide, knowing well enough to remain in the shadows. Let's see, Glide murmured to himself in a low tone, studying the lights on his cards. Wiping off some of the sweat of his forehead, the white-haired duelist set his sights on the wide cavern ahead of him. The waterfalls ran rampant from crevices in the wall. He focused on the middle one, flowing from the corridor wide enough to fit a person. It was only now lit because of the shining cards. That has to be the one. The young adult reached into his backpack of tricks, bringing out a coil of rope with 3 hooks tied to the end. He spun it around and threw it, digging it into the side of a thick rock. He jumped, swinging over the vast chasm and stealing a quick glimpse of the rushing and unforgiving waters below. Ignoring the potential fall, Glide climbed his way onto the ledge and waded through the water in his boots. Thank you again, Sabada. Just getting started, huh? Oh boy. Glide peered through the opening in the path, offering a swift nod at the container he saw in the small room beyond. A chest covered in mud and vines. He reached into his bag of tricks again, only to be distracted by the sudden disappearance of his light. As he turned to face the pedestal, just in time to notice a streak of 2 blue lights rushing toward him. That's not an actual sentence. He instinctively rolled out of the way, jumping in pain when the 2 bulbs struck the water and caused a small burst of electricity. Flicking on the flashlight from his phone, Glide spotted a tall gentleman in a dark violet blazer and faded pants. Thank you, Sabada. He seemed in his late 20s or early 30s, with brown eyes matching his long locks that were worn down. A cross gently flapped around his neck as he casually waved at Glide and retracted his weapon. "Who is—" Glide began, but the man cut him off, responding in a deep Australian accent. "Good day there, my boy." He bowed. "Hon Jing Foley's the name, but I'm sure you already knew that." Glide peered at him, still less than amused, for a few seconds before swaying his head from left to right. "Never heard of you." This set off the thief, who flailed his arms about and gritted his teeth. "Thank you, Shadu." "What? How have you not?" He took a couple deep breaths, to calm himself, slapping his forehead and chortling. "Aha, I get it. Feigning innocence, are you? Well, sorry, but wasted time's not my cup of tea. I'm afraid I'm going to have to relieve you of whatever beyond this chamber." Thank you, Sabada. Now Glide was finally invested in the small talk, raising a disgusted eyebrow. "Is that so?" he challenged, eyeing down the treasure chests again. He sighed angrily, wiping more sweat from his forehead. Look, I'm not really in the mood for someone else to be trying this, so... With that, he cut himself off, bolting into the room before the pursuer could fire his weapon again. Foley gritted his teeth, but then snickered. He had his own backpack and snapped it open to reach for a vial inside. A savory, sugary liquid filled his senses and left him with a grin. Fair enough, my boy. The chase is part of the fun anyway. Glide burst through some webs and vines, lunging at the treasure chest and peeling off some of the debris. To his luck, the chest was unlocked. He kicked it open at the handle, snatching up the circular object inside and stuffing it into his bag. He then set his sights on the path where he had entered. Still no Foley's, surprisingly. Possibility that the pursuer had no grappling hook, but Glide refused to take the chance. He desperately searched for another path out of the back room, but found only vines as he brushed at some of the walls. Turning to the source of the water instead, he stepped into it with his boots and felt around, finally stumbling upon a deep section. Glide shrugged. Done crazier things, he whispered before ducking down and crawling into the opening. He managed to fit both in the tunnel and keep his head above water, though the occasional small waves smacked his face and took him under. After roughly a minute of blindly following forward and keeping from drowning, he found his way into a new chamber, this one with a small pool in the middle. The waterfall poured from an exit much too high for Glide. He snapped his fingers in dismay, turning his attention to the rocks on the left. They led into another pit, but his only option would be to climb down. Fine, he said, jumping, barely grabbing a steady hold on the slippery, slimy rocks before starting his descent. Although the cave's dampness and shade had cooled him away from the world's heat wave, he could feel the fatigue settling in from his journey. Now where would you be going? Rang the voice of Han Jing Foley. Glide, grinding his teeth together, glimpsed up and saw the well-dressed man hanging out of the waterfall far above him. Yeah, perhaps this'll make your trip easier. The thief took a nearby rock, chucking it at Glide and pelting his right hand. Sweat was rolling from Glide's head again, but this time out of paranoia. He tried to settle down the pit while dodging more rocks, but found Foley's aim to be almost too accurate. The third one struck Glide in the back of the head, distracting him long enough to slip off a muddy part of his vertical path. Foley clapped his hands together for a job well done, holding his confident beam. Roy, that should do it. He vanished from the top of the waterfall. Ole, ole, oxen free. Meanwhile, Glide had fumbled around with his grappling device, but was able to press a button before throwing it. Glide had slid through a muddy slope, being violently thrown into the main room again, but this time over the chasm. With the button on his grappling hook pressed, the three ordinary hooks had begun spinning, digging into a rock of the deep room. The white-haired explorer gasped for air, tying the end of the rope about his belt loops with his free hand. After regaining his composure, he let go, able to dangle freely as he searched for a good hold. Glide climbed until he reached the top of his lifeline, grumbling under his breath as he sawed away to get back to the rock he had previously used to swing across the room. Although he had a second of the grappling devices in his backpack, mulling over the angle he would have had to have thrown it would have left him more disgruntled than hopeful over the situation at the angle. He tied the rope of the second device over the first, then threw himself at the chasm while throwing the second activated hook. To his surprise, the drillers moved just in time and dug into the wall near the pedestal. He detached the first device, using the second as his ascent. Once on solid ground again, the explorer took command of both hooks, repeatedly spinning them at his sides. Predicting the vile Foley's return through the front entrance, Glide immediately threw one of the hooks at the thief. Foley cringed, managing to roll out of the way of the first assault, but Glide had already used his second hook to drill into the ceiling of the cave. Before Foley could react, he received a stiff drop kick to the face from the young adult and went flying. Glide took his equipment back and made his way by the thief, exiting into the harsh jungle once more. Although the heat was barreling down on him in a matter of seconds, Glide kept at the retreat until he passed by several dozen unfamiliar trees. He took refuge behind one, absolutely unable to stand sprinting in the scorcher of a day any longer. That guy, is he gone? The explorer now held binoculars and leered through the tree. After some zooming in, he was dismayed to find the flustered pursuer already leaving the ruins and peering about. More unfortunate, he was headed in Glide's direction. Glide sighed angrily, digging for his grapple hooks again. This time he threw one into the short distance, managing to snag it around the next nearest tree. Now where could that little guy be? Foley mused to himself aloud, occasionally rubbing his face. Give you that, you got quite a punch. His faux grin was fading fast. How about we wrap up this little game of ours? Someone like you wouldn't need that artifact anyway. Glide crouched in wait of his foe, his hands at the ready. The moments leading up to Foley's feet being over the rope were torturing. Mere seconds felt like minutes, movement itself crawling to a halt. Thank you, Sabata. However, Glide's eyes remained locked on the moment, obsessed with the perfect trap. He saw his victory and poised for the pole. Foley merely stood still as Glide tugged. Nothing happened. Biting his lip, Glide slowly rolled his eyes onto Foley's, the latter's oozing with disappointment. Darn, Glide hissed. Foley's eyes shifted to a squint as he harmlessly stepped on the rope Glide was holding. You're not exactly ducks, are you? He made another lunge for the young adult who avoided him. Come on now, do you have any idea how warm it is in these things? He shook at his clothes. Just give me the artifact. What could some kid want with it anyway? I guarantee this thing is more important to me than it is to you. Glide continued to exaggerate his dodges with each swipe of his foe's fist. Oh, how cute! Foley finally backed off, giving himself a breather. Look, Seppo, I can appreciate digging around as much as the next guy, but I've got a job to do here. Now, gimme! This time, the dodge was enough to annoy him. He instantly kicked forward again, driving his knee into the explorer's sternum. Glide grunted and gasped for air, but he found himself pinned against a tree with his pursuer's arms keeping him in place, one hand against his neck and the other on his right arm. Before Foley could deliver the next kick, though, Glide threw a left and caught the tall man in his chin, making him stumble back. Glide reached for his backpack as Foley did the same, each scrambling around for a disc that slid onto their left arms. Foley's was a faded red, whereas Glide's was gray. Foley mused over the situation, holding a deck of cards in his hand. Ha! A duelist also, eh? Glide swiftly nodded, almost scoffing at the question. Can you name someone who isn't? The pursuer wiped his mouth. Fair enough, mate. And how about we end this game with a little ante? I'll leave you strung up by your strides and begging for your mum. A fire lit under the explorer's eyes as he inserted his own deck of cards into a slot on the side of the disc. If that's the only way you want to settle this, then so be it. Foley coyly bowed while producing a smirk. A true treasure hunter's contest. Duel! Duel, both shouted. I can't do both at the same time. A display on top of their discs, beeping and displaying 4,000 in a bright white font. It is duel time. All right, now remember your modern duel monsters, Foley warned with a lecturing finger. The first duelist doesn't draw anymore. I point this out mainly because in Destiny's Horizon that rule wasn't in play, but I decided to humor it and go with the Arc 5 rule set, but, whatever. So anyway, Glide took it upon himself to draw 5 cards, insisting on a droll tone. I know. He studied his cards. This is all I'll need. Holding an unforgiving scowl, the white-haired duelist threw a card vertically and into the middle front zone of his duel disc. I'll start by summoning this. A young female magician joined Glide's side, wearing a short dress with flame patterns lining the bottom of her skirt. Her long pink hair matched the glimmering orb held atop her cerulean mage's staff. Cartesia Magician, 400 attack points. Foley raised an eyebrow. Cartesia, eh? Glide took 2 more cards from his hand, depositing them into the slot to the left of his deck, the graveyard. Cartesia Magician's effect. By discarding 2 cards, I add 2 level 2 Cartesia monsters from my deck to my hand. He opened the large pile, shuffling through them until he found the cards. Thank you, Sabata. Cartesia monsters are also special. When one is on the field, I can special summon more from my hand. The second Cartesian was an archaic catapult lined with cold steel. The third was another spellcaster with a faded gray costume. Her face was concealed behind a piece of her blue cape, as well as the beige wizard's hat she donned. Cartesia Catapulter and Cartesia Soothsayer. Let's see, Catapulter has 600 attack points. Soothsayer has 0 defense points. Thank you, Sabata. Kaboom times 2. As his three monsters met, a silver chain of energy flashed for a split second between them. Nothing to be confused about. They're parallel monsters, a special monster type that can quickly swarm the field and benefit each other. He tilted his head down to his dual gear, glancing at each of the cards. But like a parallel circuit, if one part goes out, they all go out. Foley maintained his confident grin. So, just pop one and they'll all go. I've heard of these parallel cards. Your swarming tactics can't even do you any good here, as the first player can't attack. Glide nodded in affirmation, but I can use their effects. First, Soothsayer. His third monster leapt into action, a spherical object forming at the base of her fingertips. Thank you, Sabata. For each Cartesia monster in my field right now, I can confirm one card on top of my deck. Then I'm allowed to rearrange those cards any way I want. He held up 3 fingers. I have 3 Cartesians right now, so I rearrange the top 3 cards of my deck. While Glide worked, Foley chuckled to himself and stared a hole through his own hand of 5. Not bad if you're future-gazing, he admitted to himself. But with a hand like this, you're thinking way too far ahead. Glide threw out his arm in his catapult's direction. Cartesia Catapulter's effect takes 400 of your life points for each Cartesia I've got in play. A race of turquoise energy spewed from his machine, taking Foley off his feet. Foley drops to 2,800 life points. Foley grunted, feeling the sting of his opponent's relentless eyes. He quickly bounced back to his feet, brushing off his suit as though he had been unaffected by the burst. A dazzling play, my friend, but you're still on the losing end. You just don't realize it yet. I'll end my turn by placing 2 cards face down. Glide emptied his hand, and 2 enlarged backs of cards materialized at his feet. Wonderful! Then I draw! Foley's eyes widened at the sight of his 6 cards. Butler! He waved a finger. It'd be a shame to waste something so magnificent in this. So I hope you don't mind if I show you no mercy. Glide waited in silence. Now let's introduce our first contestant. A summoning portal opened on Foley's field, producing an oversized hornet with 3 stingers. A bandana was over the creature's eyes. I'll summon Blind Drone. 1,300 attack points. And what a shame. It's already stronger than all your monsters. That'd be too easy, though, so I'll help you out. He launched a green-bordered card into his dual disc back slot. Continuous spell card, Monster Cannon. The explorer turned uneasily at the card. A metallic pirate's cannon emerging on his opponent's field. Monster Cannon, he repeated with suspicion. Foley's hornet circled the cannon several times, then flew inside the barrel. Ah, one of my favorites. Monster Cannon lets me tribute an insect-type monster and fire its attack points directly at your life points. Sect Cutter! The fuse on the back of the cannon was suddenly lit, and the barrel rolled until it aimed directly at Glide. The hornet was hurled out of the device and transformed into a glowing yellow light that impacted the explorer in the abdomen. Glide drops to 2,700 life points. Glide also dropped to 1 knee. I should have read the next line. Glide dropped to 1 knee, cringing as he watched his life point meter drop. Oh, don't be a crank just yet. You're only 100 points behind me now. Another portal was next to Foley. Oh, but then I'm not done, am I? My blind drone has a special effect. Once per turn, if my blind drone resides at the graveyard, I can special summon a replacement. Another of the large hornets with 3 stingers flew out of the light. So here's another blind drone! Glide held down his head. Darn, is he going to do it again? But no worries, Foley shrugged. Monster Cannon's effect can only be played once in a turn, so you're safe. He lifted another card from his hand. I guess I'm a bad liar. Sorry there. Spell card landed ahead of him. Chimera Soaring! A red aura surrounded him briefly. This little beauty lets me pay 500 life points, and in exchange, I can perform a tribute summon as long as the monster I'm summoning is a beast, beast warrior, or insect monster. Foley drops to 2,300 life points. Now prepare! Foley's new humanoid creature donned old-fashioned samurai armor, but while its thick and bloody wings protruded out of its back, the monster's most notable feature was its plethora of heads. 3 skeletal and 2 lion. The monstrosity drew a large curved blade. Samurai Beast Zyfolt! 2,200 attack points. Glide held sharp eyes on it. Didn't you just tribute monsters from your hand? That's precisely what I did. See, Zyfolt is a level 5 monster, but it can be summoned not only with 2 tributes, but those tributes can come from my hand as well. A monster who bypasses the normal rules of tribute summoning. Glide braced himself. Guessing you figured out you shouldn't have left that monster in attack mode. Foley snapped his fingers. I've got some more surprises just for you. One's coming right up now, and it's Zyfolt's other effect. Since I tributed 2 monsters to summon him, whenever he destroys a monster in battle, that monster's attack power comes straight out of your life points. He wet his lips at the sight of the flinching explorer. Now let's wrap this up. Zyfolt, attack with Downward Gale! The 5-headed beast leapt off one of the trees, licking the tip of its blade before lunging at Glide's magician. The girl attempted to counter with an elegant and swinging kick, but found herself unable to dent this new opponent. Instead, Zyfolt shoved her away, and, his body transforming into a bloody tornado, tore through the girl and sent Glide thudding against the forest grass. Glide drops to 500 life points. That's 1,800 battle damage and 400 damage from Zyfolt's. The pursuer interrupted his own train of thought as the current surging between Catapulter and Soothsayer shattered. Both monsters also shattered like glass. Whenever a parallel monster is destroyed, Glide groaned, slowly wobbling back to a vertical base, parallel synergy destroys the rest of them. Heh, right. I almost forgot you little monsters don't got much going for 'em. Glide turned over one of his face-down cards, though. Purple-bordered one. But that doesn't mean I can't use this. Synergenesis! He grappled onto his deck. I can use it when 2 or more of my monsters are destroyed at the exact same time, and I draw 1 card for each of them. Glide snagged his freebies. Another smirk from Foley. Well, sorry to say, but they won't do you any good. See, Seppo, since I tribute summoned Zyfolt with that little Chimera Soaring card, he's allowed to attack twice in 1 turn. The samurai beast armed his weapons again. Glide balled his left hand into a fist. You're going to try to FTK me, then. Try nothing. Here we go. Downward Gale. Zyfolt ran through the brief opening in the woods again. Attack him directly. Foley's declaration was stopped cold. The sight of golden and violet sparkles filling the forest. The particles joined forces, taking the shape of a young blonde-haired woman. Her thin, athletic frame was covered by sky-blue pants, gloves, and a low-cut t-shirt. She balanced a transparent violet dagger on her right palm, shooting an overconfident grin at the samurai beast. The cunning Foley was left astounded as he demanded, How did you play a monster on my turn? Thanks to my parallel monsters, Glide deemed. If 2 or more of my monsters are destroyed in the same turn, I can automatically special summon Elise. 2,300 attack points from my hand. He waved an arm at his new follower. How about we see which of our ace monsters is stronger? Ace monster? Foley muttered in response. I assume Zyfolt is yours. Heh, you're darn right he is. And he's stronger than your little treasure hunter over there. He pulled a quick play spell out of his hand. See, I can play one of these babies without leaving my battle phase. Take this! Rush recklessly! A fierce red aura consumed his samurai beast. Now my monster gains an additional 700 points, putting it at 2,900. He then set his sights on Elise. So, that little miracle's your ace. Foley's pointer finger darted towards Zyfolt. My samurai beast will put quite the dent in her lovely face, then. Try it. Glide maintained his composure and crossed his arms. Tch, punk, I will. He pointed out again. Continue the attack! Downward Gale! Elise swung her magical dagger, only for Zyfolt to deny her the offense with a powerful swipe of his blade. The girl fumbled and Zyfolt flew once more, set ablaze in its blinding tornado. Samurai Beast controlled the low skies and prepared for the finishing blow. But Glide still retained his calm demeanor, calling, You've done it now. Foley flinched, wondering, what are you on about? The young adult's final face-down card flipped up, glossing the woods in a golden rain. Legends well will send your attack packing. He held his hand over his deck. This card lets me call the name of my top card, and if I guess it right, your monster's attack power becomes 0. If I guess wrong, my monster's power becomes 0. No longer feeling thrown back by the move, Foley flicked back his hair. Oh, is that all? A gamble? You're going to risk your hard-earned treasure on a gamble? Glide shrugged. The only gamble taken here was when you challenged me. The top card of my deck is Golden Summit. Foley scoffed. That's preposterous! You've already... His face turned pale as his mind was put on rewind. He could hear the explorer's words echoing through his head from moments earlier. From the past, Glide called, Soothsayer. For each Cartesia monster on my field right now, I can confirm one card on the top of my deck. Then I'm allowed to rearrange those cards any way I want. Foley was left to wallow in his impending defeat. And if Synogenesis only drew you 2, he recalled. I still know what the third is, Glide finished, snatching up the card and showing it. Spell card, Golden Summit. Legends well, activate. Foley's worst fears came true. The trap card's glistening streaks impaled the samurai beast Zyphalt, drawing life force from the monster and spinning it out of its tornado. Zyphalt drops to 0 attack points. Zyphalt growled as it was forced to its knees, unable to even clamp onto its sword. It clanged at its feet. Elise drew her dagger, flicking it across the field. The object shattered on Zyphalt and spread into a magical blaze. As Zyphalt fell apart, the energy also collided with Foley, sending him crashing into a booth. Why is there a booth? That's weird. Must have been copy-pasted from an earlier draft. Oh, it is! It is copy-pasted from an earlier draft. I can tell by the rest of the paragraph. Well, say Foley was sent crashing into a tree. Foley's life points dropped to 0. Oh! Foley huffed, doubling over and mistakenly landing his head on a tree. He couldn't counter me like that. My hand was foolproof! Glide folded away his dual disc, retrieving his grappling hooks and venturing away from the pursuer. Game's over. So the artifact is mine. Now stay away from me. He finally changed his expression to a short-lived grin. I got one. I finally got one, Dad. Red carpet and golden statues surrounded the inner sanctum of a massive airship. A man in his mid-20s casually sauntered in, his spiked and white hair flapping with the industrial-sized but silent air conditioners spinning throughout the chamber. He wore a dark, thick cloak. He hummed to himself in a light, half-English tone. Oh, what shall we read today? Maybe a good mystery. He approached the right side of the room. Seemingly endless shelves of books were stacked and spanned the whole wall. The gentleman reached the nearby ladder and climbed it, using a pulley attached to the top to slide across the many reeds. Decisions, decisions. A light ring in his pocket broke his attention. After dancing to the tune for a moment, he took his cell phone from his pocket and flipped it open. Ah, Foley! How fares the search, my friend? He kept swaying left and right, still imagining the music. Oh my, now that's a shame. A little bit of a knot in our plans, eh? Well, don't let it disappoint you too much. We've still got a lot of work to do, after all. He paused, listening to Foley's banter for a good half-minute. Finally, his mind was working, and offered, Oh, now come, Foley, we can't get discouraged too easily. How about you rest for a bit, then follow the boy and give it the old college try again? Oh, trust me, it shouldn't be that difficult for someone like you. The man shut his phone and went back to book searching. How wonderful! The astrolabes are beginning to show themselves. And that is the end of Chapter 1. Yay. Hooray. Oh god, I gotta drink a little bit of water here. Kinda have a sore throat. Alright. Oh, now it's 8:44. You want another one? put it off until later, but I have no idea when we would do this again, so. Sorry, I had to mute for a while, coughing and whatever. Let me see what Jub sent. Oh. Here it is. It's Chibi Blaine, I guess. He was gonna get me some, notifications that are kind of like his Julius one. Do I take this to mean we're done reading? Yeah, Danganronpa, Blaine, Pixel Sprites. Oh yeah, I kind of see the sword back here now. Yeah. Julius's last name is Stabler. Nobody's voting for anything, although that's not too surprising. Nobody ever votes for anything on this channel. So let's see, Stabler, Julius Stabler. We could do that. I don't know how we haven't thought of that joke before. It's been like forever. Julius Stabler. One more? Alright. Well, here is chapter 2 then. Alright, I guess turn 2. I guess I was still calling them, I suppose. This one be strict business. After what seemed like hours of exhaustion and dehydration, Glide could finally make out a small 2-block town amidst the woods. He sighed with relief, dragging his backpack off the ground and re-equipping it. The familiar sight of Luxem Town left him rejuvenated and almost entirely forgetful of his multiple near brushes with collapse. With the last spurt of energy, he set his sights on a rather large building split into 2 segments, one with white walls and the other made of wooden planks. An elderly Russian man in a black overcoat and jeans sat at a large wooden coffee table. Admittedly, Glide probably isn't as interesting as Ethan, Isley, or Blaine. He's very withdrawn. I mean, there's a reason for it, but we probably can't illustrate it in the small amount of chapters that I read. But yeah, no, don't worry, that's intentional. He's supposed to be like... I guess he was supposed to be like if Yusei doesn't open up to people. I guess that's the best comparison I can make. Yeah, I really wanted him to be kind of like withdrawn or whatever. But yeah. Also, you could see this character again. I mean, remember, this is taking place on the same continent as, you know, Dokkailo and everything, so I might bring him back. But yeah, anyway, what was I doing? Oh, elderly Russian man in a black overcoat and jeans sat at a large wooden coffee table, surveying the marble chess set in front of him. He had his hand on the queen, eventually deciding to set it directly next to the black bishop. He sighed, glancing toward the clock to his left. He then surveyed the plethora of people in the massive wooden bar behind him, the hum of a large fan filling his ears. But as the old man stared at the happy bar patrons, he smiled and recognized a figure approaching the building. He flicked open the glass slider doors separating him from the room. Reclining in his chair as Glide strolled through the door. Still drenched in sweat from his journey, Glide stepped over to the table, studied the chess pieces for several seconds, reached for one of the black knights, and placed it several spaces away from the white king. The Russian man stuttered as he leaned over the table, surprised to find that he could no longer protect his king. Glide dropped the beige backpack near the door, wrestling his deck out of the box and beginning to shuffle it. "Too freaking warm out there," he murmured, short of breath. "This heat wave's got to go away or something. Dying out there." The older gentleman stroked his beard, still staring at the board in defeat. He remained fixated on chess for several more moments, finally sighing and giving his young friend attention with a nod. "Oh, he's, weatherman's claiming it'll come to a stop by the end of the week, luckily. Been telling myself lately I need to get out more, but this heat's not doing me any favors. Just can't bring myself to do it." Glide scratched the back of his head while chuckling, knowing the old man's complaint all too well. He simply acknowledged it with a nod. After some rustling about in a nearby closet, he found a large fan, plugging it in and basking in its breeze. Glimpsing to his right, he spotted several tan women grouped together at a booth. "Got some new people in here, huh?" "Yep." The old man nudged Glide as he followed his eyes, joking, "Couple of lookers there. How about taking some time off and finding yourself a date?" I am not doing this guy's accent any justice whatsoever. "How about taking some time off and finding yourself a date?" Glide shut his eyes and brushed off the sentiment, heading out of the room without his gear. "Don't even start that again. You know it never gets anywhere." As he departed the room and left the older gentleman with his chessboard, Glide glanced up to see the menu dangling from the wall of the main bar. His mouth watered as he passed by all the round tables full of people happily eating sausage links, eggs, hash brown sandwiches, and, of course, Mrs. Anna Feldberg's famous short stacks. Glide spotted the older, tanned woman with red hair in her traditional black dress. As he sat at the front of the bar, he could not help but comment, "Looking lovely as ever, Anna." The British woman laughed, countering, "Well, we didn't exactly fancy all white in my day." I can't... God, I guess I'm not up for doing accents right now. She held a menu in her hand, but did not give it to him. "Let me guess. Double S with strawberries, whipped cream, and your massive drink of orange juice." "Same old," he calmly confirmed. Anna had already written down the order as soon as she saw Glide, just now handing the paper back to the chef behind her. She leaned on the computer and poured him some orange juice. "So what's new with you?" Glide rolled his eyes. For some reason, his paragraph's not indented. Glide rolled his eyes. "Your husband likes to remind me I have no love life. Figured he would find another hobby, but I guess not." She giggled. "Oh, you know, Vasily's just playing around. Probably drunk as a lord over there anyway." "Nah, he seemed sober." Glide chugged most of the orange juice, shaking all the glasses until he received a refill. Now she was smiling, her verbal trap a little more than successful. "Well, grasp the nettle and go find yourself someone, then." His disgruntled snarl was enough of a response for her, though she still hoped to probe him further. "Take off the belt and braces." Wishing he had not brought it up, the tired male glimpsed around the bar as he gave off a polite laughter. "See, you got some new people here, too. Is there a tournament going on or something?" She was quick to not only answer, but slapped down a colorful flyer near him as well. "Ah, yeah." Anna eyed down a group of 5 gentlemen in the back of the room. "Pretty big one, too. They're offering a couple championship rare packs." Glide blinked with intrigue. "Huh. Pretty good haul. I'm not interested, though. I'm going to try and get out of here in the next couple days. I have some things I need to look into." He patted his pocket, reminding himself that he still had his deck. Besides, it's one of those gauntlet matches anyway. Those things are total luck of the draw, and you're pretty screwed if you open it. Just a waste of an entry fee. She tapped him on the noggin while presenting his plate of short stacks. "Belt and braces," she repeated before casually strutting away. Glide murmured under his breath, staring at the warm and tempting pancakes with hungry and squinted eyes as he tried to avoid seeing the flyer again. With one motion, he snatched up his fork and dug into the sweet and addicting meal. "So my old man happened to drop by?" Anna was hesitant to answer, but motioned to Vasily. "Oh, of course, dear. Here, Vasily actually got another note for you." Glide nearly stopped eating in disappointment. You've got to be kidding. He put down his fork and wore a stiff frown. How the heck did I miss him again? Vasily waved off Glide's frustration, though, patting the explorer on the back and insisting, "He really does miss you, but he can't stay for too long at all." He handed Glide a small beige envelope. "Here, open it up. I think I felt another card inside." Anna and Vasily gathered around him, holding each other's hand in anticipation as Glide opened the package. All three were able to get a good gander at the note on the inside. "Hey, sport. How's the exploring going? Your mom and I are looking for any possible leads we can, but in the meantime, here's something cool to tide you over. I promise you'll be ready to explore the Sanskrit temple soon, but we need more time. Check Panama Village for some cool caves. This card is a Tiki-lin. Treat it with care. Hope to see you soon, Dad." Glide snatched the card out of the envelope, giving it a quick read. Man, every time. Without having to be told, Anna pounced on the small spare container. She shoved Glide's remaining food into it, sealed it, and handed it to him before he could walk out of her range. She and Vasily observed with worried frowns as the young adult took his exit up the nearby staircase. Vasily and Anna snuck into the back office again, the husband reaching behind a painting and striking a panel. Part of the white wall rolled open to reveal the stone-covered staircase, leading to a gray concrete basement. The two ventured into the hidden room, and Vasily plopped into a small wooden chair. Anna crossed her rooms angrily and tapped the floor repeatedly with one of her high heels. "Have you decided when you're going to tell him yet? It's almost been 3 years, Vasily." She internally cringed when she thought of the back wall, full of similar-looking envelopes, all sealed with pre-written letters and a card. They had a number attached to them beginning with 5. "I know, dear, but I'm sorry. It's what Greiger asked me to do." Vasily stood again. "I have made my decision. You know this already." He began leading his wife out of the buried chamber, already sick of it. "If Glide had any suspicion Greiger was dead, and he got his hands on these, there's no telling what he'd do." He shook his head and shuddered at the thought. "Just please work with me on this one. I can't let him be that way." He stopped at the top of the floor, glimpsing toward a picture on the white wall. It was surrounded by a trophy case. He placed a hand over the right side of his head. "They called me King Vasily," he would constantly tell Glide and anyone else who would listen. Yeah, they would answer without enthusiasm. He never knew if it was mockery, disbelief, or legitimate respect. Seldom did he think it was the latter, unfortunately. He squeezed near the part of his head, still able to hear the droning of a car horn. Then, metal crunching. Finally, an endless ringing. The old man shivered, darting his cranium from left to right and finally sighing. Surely by now it was long enough for him to forget those noises, but fortune continued to laugh at him. Luckily, he could still laugh back. "That sure was some real depression." Anna gritted her teeth, patting him on the back and whispering, I know. Vasily struck near the case. I can't let Glide fall into the same slump I was in. Even if it's different, even if he still feels bad every time he comes back from one of those trips, the kid still has hope, darn it." He went back to his chessboard, resetting the pieces and beginning to play against himself. "Sorry, let me relax for a bit. Thanks, dear." She nodded and returned to the bar component of their business. Meanwhile, Foley had snuck through the brush, and despite being beat up and winded from his duel, stumbled upon Luxem Town. He licked his lips and scampered toward the white and wooden building. Remaining out of sight, he was able to get at the window, Vasily inside, and still downing his woes with the chessboard. "I know that kid's hair," Foley murmured to himself. "I just gotta find that astrolabe and... Oi," came another deep voice. Foley turned, about to lash out, but backed off at the sight of a carriage that had somehow snuck up on him, as well as 5 gentlemen staring him down. The 4 suits on the side all held the same flat hairstyle. The guy in the middle, though, around 6'0" and in his early 20s, wore a white laboratory jacket. The guy in the jacket, his spiked and gelled red hair refusing to budge in the wind, called out again, "Answer me now. Do you know of a man named Vasily Feldberg?" Now the hunter was intrigued. "Is he some kind of short kid with white hair?" "No." old Russian who... He leered inside the window, catching sight of the chess player, and ignoring Foley now, he motioned to his four goons, "Let's go." The four saluted at the same time, and everyone bypassed Foley completely. Oh, to rewind time, Vasily thought to himself, still enthralled with his visions. The kicking open of his building's back door startled him, and he leapt to see the younger gentleman and his four backups. Vasily was already shivering at the sight of Vincent Fox, unable to answer as the other men also forced their way into his building. He instead backed away, though unfortunately there was no exit behind him. It would do him little good at this point anyway. Vincent Fox shrugged his shoulders at the old man's silence, cheering, "What's wrong? Cat tongue and all that?" He waited to get a scowl. "Or perhaps it's that you never thought you'd see me again, Vasily Feldberg." His backup was carefully surrounding the room. The older man was already contemplating retreating into his hidden sanctum once more, but cringed at his stupidity of having closed it up again when Anna left the room. He now stood against the wall with four grinning mugs and a stern one staring him down. Vincent held out his inviting hand, but his tone was still unforgiving. "Now maybe we could just give you the benefit of the doubt. Maybe your senile brain just forgot all about the money you owe us." He pocketed his hands, observing the trophy case and the numerous paintings scattered about the large office walls. "Pretty nice place you got here. Did you buy all this stuff? Guess my father's money did you some good after all." If Vasily could move any closer to the wall, he would have melded with it. "Well, you see," he tried to explain, "business has been a bit slow, so I'm afraid I wouldn't be able to pay it off right now." Another glimpse at all the bar patrons left Vincent cross. "Slow business, huh? You take me for some kind of idiot, old man? Did you really waste my father's gift on a dump like this and think you could get away with it?" He snapped his fingers. Two of the suits ran over and bowed to him, each holding an open briefcase. One had a dual disc and the other had a deck. "I'm gonna enjoy this." "Wait!" Vasily dropped to his knees. "Please, I beg of you. Just give me a little more time. I can get Gallagher his money, I promise." Done with his antics, Vincent flipped the chessboard over and rushed Vasily. "I'm tired of your lies, you miserable pile of..." As he swung a punch, he was surprised to find Vasily possessed the agility to not only dodge him, but roll under two of his henchmen as well. Vasily dove under another table and revealed his own dual disc, a deck already inside the deck zone. "Thank you, Firestar." The Russian now wore fear, but also a vile scowl. "So it's going to be that..." wait, who's talking here? Yeah. "So it's going to be that way, is it?" "What's going on?" Anna exclaimed, running into the room. Vincent's eyes darted at her as he snarled, "Get out, woman! Your husband has some business with Gallagher Fox's clan." He took out his own equipment from his guards. "Thank you, Prince." Anna ran for her husband, only to be cut off by the henchmen. By now, the bar-goers had caught wind of the feud, and many had fled. Only a few remained to watch the commotion, but from a safe distance. Vasily and Vincent put holes in each other with their glares, shuffling their decks and picking up 5 cards. Vincent offered one more shrug before asking, "Are you really sure you want to go through with this? I'm not going to show wasteful scum like you any mercy." Vasily only delivered a nod in response. "Well, fine. No skin off my nose." They both yelled duel. I can't do it. Vasily sprawled out his 5 cards in his line of sight. After studying them, he glanced over and warned, "I'd like to be peaceful here, young man. Now I'll say it again. I apologize for what I've done, but if you give me some more time, your father will get his money." Vincent scoffed at the comment, pointing at his dual disc. "Once this baby's activated," he countered, "I don't care about the money anymore. Now I just want to see you beg for mercy." Vasily shut his eyes momentarily and took a deep breath. "Well then you leave me with no choice but to battle to the best of my ability." He threw a card out of his hand. It materialized in his back row and to his side. "I'll place this face down." He shared a long stare down with the young man until finally deciding, "And that is all." Anna gulped. "What?" she mused. "Honey, don't you maybe want to play a little more than..." "Ha!" Vincent interrupted, drawing a 6th card. "I almost feel sorry for you." He put his newest card in the monster zone. Almost. A panther with gold braces on its knees and elbows rose, sliding its limbs onto 4 gauntlets that had spikes sticking out of their tops. A green gem lit on its forehead. Come to me, Slay Slasher! 1,700 attack points. Vasily braced himself. Since the old geezer doesn't have any monsters, attack him directly. The tiger's sword fired out of the bulb, piercing Vasily in his leg and dropping him to one knee. Vasily goes to 2,300 life points. Anna shrieked and tried to make another move for her husband, but was once more cut off by the derelicts in suits. This time they even shoved her away. She puffed up her lips, ready to slap them. "You can't hit a woman!" she bellowed. Vincent merely held his head down, waving off his goons. Well, maybe they don't see any women. "You dare!" Vasily started, reaching for his face down. "I activate!" Vincent waved his finger, and Slay Slasher dove across the large office again, jabbing at Vasily's face-down card. The card crumbled in half. "You don't get to use that just yet. See, Slay Slasher has a special ability. If it deals battle damage to my opponent or manages to destroy a monster in battle, I can destroy a set card on the field." He took glee in his opponent's grimace, but knew it was only about to get sweeter. Oh, and that effect adds on 500 points of damage. Vasily wailed as the tiger headbutted him, sending him crashing into his display case. One trophy fell, but the Russian was able to grab it just before it could hit the ground. Vasily drops to 1,800 life points. Vincent tapped his dual disc and a miniature holographic projector shone from the circle at the top. Now let's see what we've got. He saw only a purple border and card picture. Ah, shock draw. Not bad. You would have been able to draw 1 card for every 1,000 damage you took this turn, but I guess that won't be happening now, will it? He deposited a card into his own back row. But I guarantee you I'll get to use mine. I set it face down. Now take your crummy last turn. Vasily flinched. Last? A nod. I'm already getting bored of your crap. You haven't even put up a fight. Vasily's frown was stronger than ever, but he regained some self-esteem by remembering the trophies and pictures behind him. Some say the fight has yet to begin. Draw! He flicked the top card of his deck into his hand. And now, young man, karma for underestimating me. Karma infused with the wills of those who have taken the abuse of your father's clan for over 20 years now. Vincent could only laugh at the sentiment. If you knew about my father's clan, why betray our trust so easily? Vasily suddenly smirked, drawing confusion from everyone else in the room. I'm just some old man everyone should learn from. Before anyone could respond, he put another card into his dual disc. Shah's Reinforcements, a spell card. Since I have no monsters on my field, I bring forth 2 legends. Thank you, Firestar. Vincent's eyes flickered. Legends. The first monster to emerge on Vasily's side was a life-size pawn chess piece made of bright beige rock. White stripes lined it. Shah's Pawn! 1,100 attack points. The second monster was built similar to the pawn, but was a knight with glimmering eyes. Shah's Knight! 1,200 attack points. He stood proud now, arms at his sides. Behold, the attack of my chess monsters! Vincent's intrigue was gone, replaced by a closed-eyed shrug with his arms out. And here I thought you were going to do something worthwhile. Instead, you show me these useless monsters. We shall see. He tapped his knight's card and its eyes lit. The horse soared toward the ceiling, making Vincent and his buddies flinch. Shah's Knight is strategically placed in my 4th monster zone. He clutched his hands together. And just like a real knight, it can crush something that is 2 spaces forward and 1 space to the side from it. That is a spell trap card of dual monsters. The knight landed on Vincent's card, blowing it to dust. However, the dust then kicked up, spreading a storm through the field. Vincent maintained his stare on Vasily. Your card's okay, I guess, but you just destroyed my Wild Tornado. Vasily cringed, familiar with the card. Wild Tornado. Foley cackled, still hidden on the outside of the window. This old guy's getting pretty trounced, he muttered, his focus changing to Vincent. This bloke, on the other hand, when it's destroyed, Vincent continued, I destroy one face-up card on the field. He sent his unforgiving pointer finger onto his foe. Destroy your Shah's pawn. The storm grew thicker, and a mixture of sand and stone tore through the life-sized chess piece. Vasily widened his brows in surprise. But when Shah's knight destroys a card, it gains 500 attack points. 1,700. Eh? Anna huffed. But then... Oh, thank you, Bazzer. I can't read that. Hold on. It says, cup clear and one birthday gift. That could be discussed after the reading. Thank you very much. Anna huffed. Why would he destroy Shah's pawn instead? She held a bit of a smirk. Now his monster's as strong as yours. I love how I've just given up on her accent. True, Vincent admitted, keeping his eyes on the older gentleman. But if your deck is really true to chess, your Shah's knight wouldn't be able to attack any of my monsters. Vasily's head was lowered to defeat again as he thought, yes, knights can only attack 2 and 1, just as he predicts. He tossed another card into his back row. Then I shall play this face down and end my turn. How boring. Vincent drew, throwing his new card into a monster zone. A dark and violent creature with no legs climbed into play, its arms made out of rotating blades. I summon Clawmonger. 1,600 attack points. Now, Slay Slasher, attack Shah's knight. Vasily grunted as this monster crashed against the beast. Huh, but even if they both fall, you won't get a chance to use that effect again. He revealed his set card. My closed file card is a continuous trap card, so I activate it now and avoid its destruction by Slay Slasher's effect. Very well. Both monsters erupted, but as they struggled to overpower one another. Also, monsters have the same attack power. But when a monster summoned by Shah's reinforcements falls in battle, I may draw an extra card. He now held 3. Vincent emerged from the debris also unscathed. Draw all you want. When a beast or beast warrior is destroyed by battle, I can special summon this card from my hand. A crack in the floor gave rise to a wall of flames that had a violet sphere floating through them. Eyes popped out of the circular creation. Cho Wall! 1,600 defense. Does that mean he did a suicide attack on purpose? Vasily wiped his mouth, trying to catch his breath. This duelist knows what he's doing. Battle. Clawmonger. Attack directly. No! Vasily pointed to his now glowing trap card. This is what I've waited for. When the opponent attacks me directly, I may send closed file to the graveyard to special summon a fallen Shah's pawn from the graveyard. The life-sized pawn took to the field again, this time giving off a small white glow. The light spread across the field, taking the appearance of a second pawn that then emerged. But now closed file also grants me a second Shah's pawn, and this one comes from my deck. Glowing annoyed with the old man's antics, Vincent squeezed his fist. So you predicted this. Then predict it one more time. Clawmonger, attack! The rotating blades on his legless fiend sawed through the enormous rock like nothing, leaving it to crumble into bits and spread its remains at Vasily. He was thrown violently into the floor again. Vasily drops to 1,300 life points. At the top of the bar's attic, Glide had flopped onto a small bed, rolling on the beige blanket and staring at the trinket in his hand. A dark silver triangular plate. Thank you, Sabina. A dark silver triangular plate. Several measurement scales and ticks littered its front and back, the rough carving of a sphere in its center. The Astrolabe of Chronicles, he hummed to himself, letting the object naturally spin about. He could still hear an older voice continually bragging, The 4 astrolabes of Resonant. Mystical artifacts transcending even time themselves. Extraordinary! The hushed accent was always from his father, rolling open numerous parchments and littering his study with books and pictures of the items. Outfitted in an explorer's hat, vest, and pants, the man would sprint between his bedroom and the study, organizing more and more reading material on the subject every day. What are they for? A younger Glide would always whisper silently, still able to hear his father's answers. Don't you know? echoed the memory. Why, they say whoever manages to assemble all four will be able to make a wish upon the attribute that befits them most. Just imagine what we could do, the damage we could reverse. Chronicles. Glyes stated again, clenching the object and sitting up. Time. Now a female voice rang in his head, insisting, Honey, don't you think it's dangerous to be running around and digging all these places? What about all the other people who would be after them? This could be our chance, the father's memory countered. The chance to undo time itself! Glyde stood and ventured toward his windowsill, leaning on it and spinning the object in front of him again. He let out a small yawn as the village's heat blustered into his way, prompting him to move, and slammed shut the glass. He scampered into the corner of the old dusty room and sat himself by the fresh, by comparison at least, air conditioning. The wind flapped at him as he gave the astrolabe another glimpse, envisioning two others standing next to his father. Time. Back to the duel. Vincent held a blank expression as his older opponent struggled to get back to his feet. What's wrong, geezer? He taunted, spreading his arms. Fight me back. Or are you too afraid of what you've unleashed by pissing me off? Thank you, Bazzer. Anna was once more instigated, this time doing her own shoving and batting two of the flunkies out of her way. You leave my husband alone, she cried, her hands clamped together near her neck. Just take whatever money we have in the register and leave. I'll even write you a check. The four henchmen refrained from counterattacking, instead glancing toward the duelist in the white lab coat. Vincent considered the proposal, but then bit down on his lip. No, he muttered, observing his flopping opponent. Now I just want him to know he's screwed up. Before Anna could charge again, the goons blocked her off. Get out, you bully, you wretch! Now it was at the top of her lungs. You miserable little thug! No. Vasily murmured, getting a hold on the floor and finally pushing back to his feet. He's right, Anna. This isn't about the money anymore. A fire burned through his eyes as he reached for his deck. Thank you, Sabata. This is my pride now. As a duelist, as a man even, I defend myself. Yes, Vincent replied, a sick grin popping onto his mug. That's what I like to see, the warrior's true spirit. What's left of it, anyway. Another card formed ahead of him. I'll set this. Now, entertain me. Vasily yanked his whole deck out of its zone, yelling, I've waited to do this. Shah's Pawn's effect. He searched through, revealing the third copy of the card. During the end phase, if one Shah's pawn has been fallen, another may be added to my hand. Vincent gave a suspicious squint. You didn't use that effect before. Now is the time. Vasily pulled another card from the freshly shuffled deck. My turn! A new spell card rose to his side. Activate King's Gambit! He pointed at Clawmonger. Now, this turn. If one of my chess pieces Thank you, Bazzer. Now, this turn. If one of my chess pieces manages to vanquish a creature of yours. During my next turn, the king and queen will appear for no cost. Shah's... Thank you, Fabian. Oh, hi, Fabian. Shah's king and Shah's queen? Anna thought to herself. Together, those cards would be able to destroy whatever this thug summons against him. Then do it, Vincent whispered with impatience. Vasily threw his final copy of Shah's Pawn onto the field. It formed next to his other standing one. As I shall. Now that two of my pawns have assembled, their power is even greater. He snapped his finger and one of the pawns began floating for the ceiling. Like in chess, Shah's pawn can only attack what is ever directly to the left or right of it. But you've placed your Clawmonger in Zone 2, and my pawn is in Zone 1. Now an attacking Shah's pawn gains 500 attack points for each copy of itself on the field. 2100. This climbs it higher than any monster you've summoned so far. Vincent remained unimpressed, but at least brought his arm up when Shah's pawn crashed onto the field, obliterating his Clawmonger and leaving only his dusty rags on the field. Vasily cringed. Why haven't your life points decreased? The relentless duelist centered his sights on his remaining monster. Cho Wall serves as a firewall, dividing beasts and their predators from each other. If a beast or beast warrior battles while it's face up, I take no battle damage. His eyes flickered. In other words, if you want to damage me, you have to cross my wall of fire first. Then I shall! Vasily tapped his second monster. Thank you, Bazar. Vasily tapped his second monster, and the remaining Shah's pawn took to the air. My remaining servant, defeat his... Quick play, command silencer. Vincent's spell card raced up, producing a deafening screech that shot shockwaves throughout the office and even into the bar beyond. Patrons, Vasily, Anna, and even Vincent's own followers covered their ears. This card negates one attack. Then I draw a card. He picked it up. Nice try. Vasily snapped his fingers again, this time in disgust. Even so, I won that battle against Clawmonger earlier, so next turn, King's Gambit will activate. I'll be able to special summon Shah's King and Shah's Queen from anywhere I wish. Hand, deck, or graveyard. Dang. Foley exhaled sharply on the outside of the building. He's still got plenty of fight left in him. Vincent was already grappling the next card of his deck, though, murmuring, I won't let you get that far. He drew, his eyes centered on the spell card he pulled. Activate Fiend's Sanctuary. A miniature metallic being with a humanoid shape, but no hands, feet, or face appeared. Special summon one metal fiend token. He extended his arm to the grave. Next, the effect of Clawmonger. Anna's left eye squinted as she pondered. What? That monster was already destroyed. Does it have an effect that can be played from the graveyard? Vincent threw a card from his hand. By discarding one card, Clawmonger revives. A hole ripped open above the battlefield, and the legless fiend crawled out once more. However, this time its body was a bright blue. When special summoned this way, Clawmonger loses its attack power and is treated as a token monster. Token monster? Vasily, Anna, and Foley all repeated. Well, I can't do that. Finally, Cho Wall's effect. The flames suddenly died out, and the remaining creature held a similar blue tint to Clawmonger. By negating my own monster's effects, it too could be treated as a token monster. He held another card in front of his eyes. Now the preparations are complete. I release all three of my tokens. A swirling vortex of dark and red energy opened beneath the field, a distortion settling throughout the office as a portal spat out a tall, thick creature buried inside golden chains. The creature's bound wings fluttered helplessly and its scaled hands twisted maniacally inside the prison. Only the monster's sharp eyes were able to peek through the mask fallen over its head. Thank you, Prince. Come to me, Ka-Su-Chain! Undetermined attack. Vasily and Anna stepped back and realized the monster's full height was about to take out the ceiling to the office. Sure enough, Ka-Su-Chain towered far over the battlefield and roared angrily, a thick steam leaving its mouth. The wave of heat was now free to creep inside the building. What? The couple shouted in shock. How could a card do that? Vasily continued, his mouth slowly rolling open. Vince's harsh eyes faced his opponent as he explained, Ka-Su-Chain can be tribute summoned with any number of monsters, and for each token monster tributed, it gains 1,000 attack points. 3,000 attack! Battle. The ground rumbled around them. Paint. Ka-Su-Chain released a deafening screech, causing everyone else to cover their ears again. The office returned to normal, the erosion now spinning into each of Vasily's monsters. The chess pieces were contorted, one of the pawn's chiseled bodies falling. Vasily watched in horror, but was surprised to find his monster slowly returning to normal as the vicious monster let up on its cries. Vincent folded his arms, everyone else silent in anticipation. Vasily's field had erupted in a blaze, throwing him into the brush just beyond his bar. Anna rushed to his aid, this time able to blow through Vincent's reinforcements. Vincent stepped forward, motioning to his guards as Vasily's life points dropped to 0. Vincent bent over near the two, ignoring Anna's disgusted scowl. Instead, he focused on the beaten, battered, half-shut eyes of his fallen opponent. "You know what?" he started, waving his followers over. "On second thought, maybe I have a solution we can all appreciate." "Enough!" Anna demanded, but was suddenly tugged backwards by all four of Vincent's henchmen. This time they had a good enough grip on her, working her arms behind her back to detain her. "Stop this at once!" Vincent stood face to face with the struggling woman. "Mrs. Feldberg, your husband owes these fine gentlemen and myself some money. But we're willing to make compromises. We think you'll do just as well." "I don't think so." The ominous echo left Vincent with wandering eyes until he finally spotted Glide standing atop his carriage. Glide held his dual disc far above him and in the debt collector's direction. Though uninterested in the answer, Vincent found himself wondering, "And who are you now?" Glide jumped off the carriage and landed just ahead of Vincent. "That little trick you just pulled on my friend was cute." He pointed to Vincent's dueling gear. "Why don't you try it on me?" And that is the end of Chapter 2. Chapter 2 is over. He's dead. Forever. But the chess deck was pretty fun to write back in the day. I had wanted to do... Thank you, Fabian. I had wanted to do something like it in Battlezone, but I didn't really perfect the design. So I wanted to bring it back in like a future series, and I don't know, I came up with the idea of this kind of old mentorish guy that accompanies Glide and is basically handing him all these fake notes because they don't know where the father is. Vasily's character is actually... He's actually really fun to write, I remember. He was going to do one major thing later on in the series, but... it was, I don't know, it was fun. I don't write many middle-aged characters either, so maybe that's why, because he was kind of a breath of fresh air from what I had been doing and all my other stuff. Most of my characters are in their late teens or early 20s. Foley's a little older, but Vasily is, like, distinctly middle-aged, so is Anna. I also had the idea one time to do this like, thank you, Bazzer. Confetti those cake bits. I also had the idea to do, like, an origin story with Vasily and Anna. I really wish I could have gotten the Russian accent a little more consistent during the reading here, because I know exactly how I want him to sound. I just was not... I don't know, my throat was kind of screwing with me. I wasn't doing a terribly good job of the accent there, but yeah. So yeah, there's some to Glide, but I don't know, he initially, for sure, is maybe one of the more boring sets of my main characters. He does have stuff going on, but you do have to climb through the series. But yeah, he really is just meant to be kind of like this shut-in who... I guess he's more of an introvert. That makes more sense. He just kind of blows everybody off. He wants to know about his father. He's chasing these astrolabes. A large part of the series is actually based around, like, breaking him out of his shell and everything. So he gets a little more character development, but, whatever. I think he works. I want him to be this, like, dead serious protagonist who's just in there for business and then he leaves. Also, Shadow, thank you very much. So yeah, if you guys enjoyed Zero Sec, it'll eventually show up in Dokkailo if I get that far. Actually, the Paradise story that I'm writing takes place on the same continent that Glide is on. So there's a potential for early crossovers, but yeah. So I don't know, if you're interested in more of this, I've got episodes 3, 4, 5, 6, and I think 7. Is 7 actually done? No, 7's not done, so 3 through 6 are actually complete. But yeah, we can read more later. I just wanted to do a little goofy celebration for my birthday. So I'm going to end the recording session here so that I can upload to Twitch, and then we'll be back for some Assassin's Creed. Thanks for watching, everyone. Bye!